Hey, it's Adam, the Backpack Theory podcast, where we unpack past experiences to help define a better future. And today, we're going to be unpacking finding purpose. And my guest is Alexander Taylor from the Alexander Taylor Show. If you follow him, he's also on a podcast called, is it Oka?
Okay.
Okay, all right, sorry. It's OAKA. Which is pretty massive. They actually just had an interview with Kevin Gates the other day. He is 25. He is a senior at UCO, creates a lot of beautiful content, and we connected, and I asked him what he wanted to talk about, and he was like, finding purpose. So, Alexander, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I haven't did an interview in a while, so it's fun being on the other side sometimes.
Dude, it really is. You know, I mean, you're an interesting person. I feel like you have so many things that I can ask you.
Thank you. I think by the end of this too, you'll be like, whoa, but we'll see.
So I know that we kind of talked about, you know, we always do like the pre-show interview and kind of go through things and talk about it. And I know that, you know, one of the big reasons we can actually, cause, you know, anytime I invite someone on the podcast, I'm like, so what do you want to talk about? And they're like, I don't really. And we started unpacking it. And I know that you said yourself that you had some struggles whenever it came to mental health throughout your life. And those are, you know, you kind of live this life where you're completely open and transparent. Like, was there some time in your life before like we really jumped too deep into it, like where you kind of like hit a spot where you just started being open about that stuff?
Yeah, probably in 2016, 2017, I started being more open about it because I feel like I didn't have a choice. Just, you know, when you bottle things up, it's like it can build. So you kind of just feel like, you know, I might as well just let it all go and just deal with people being judgmental or whatever it may be. Just open up and just let it all out. Because a lot of people are dealing with the same problems you are. So, and I found that out by being vulnerable, opening up to everyone, that a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, I deal with the same issues. So that makes you feel better. And then it's just been like that ever since.
Did you like so what happened? What year was that?
2016.
So what happened like during that time? Like, I mean, was there like a big, like did something happen in your life? Did you have like a big, like traumatic experience? Were you going through depression? Like, I mean, where were you at in life whenever that happened?
So in 2016, I was in a relationship. This is my junior or senior of high school. I can't remember exactly, but I know it was June of 2016 in the summer. So I think I was going into my senior year, and I was in a very, very toxic relationship, mainly due to myself. I was the main perpetrator in it. So in saying that, in the summer of 2016, I had thoughts of suicide due to a breakup with that girl I was dating. And it was one of the worst depressive episodes I've ever been through. I was in my room, completely dark, not eating, not drinking, not sleeping, just literally wake up, cry, go back to sleep, cry, go back to sleep. It was a lot of my mom, my family, because they were like, you know, I'm as you see by my content, I'm very out there, I'm very funny, I'm loud, I like to be around people, but at the same time, when things like that occur, breakups or life changes, I take them really, really hard. So in saying that, I have thoughts of suicide, and I was texting the girl I was dating at that time in high school, and obviously the messages became concerning. So she called the cops, and it was a whole ordeal. Long story short, trying to wrap that up, I basically ran off, no one knew where I was, and then I was on the phone with the suicide hotline and the police department, and long story short, like I said, cops are in front of me, put your hands behind your back. It was emergency order detention. That's a 5-day mandatory stay legally to be in a psychiatric ward. And I had just turned 18, so there's nothing my mom can do. There's nothing anyone can do. It's kind of just a wake-up call right there in that moment. So I had, let me think. So I had to stay in there for 5 days. At the time, the police couldn't find a bed at a good psychiatric ward or mental hospital, I should say. And I had to go to it's a mental hospital in Oklahoma City called Cedar Ridge. And I had to be put in the age demographic was like 50 and older. So I'm there 18, just turned 18, and everyone there is about 50 or older. And basically they all treated me like, you know, their grandson. They treated me like a baby, but in a good way, meaning like they really cared for me, asked me, why am I there? I shouldn't be there. What's wrong? The nurses, everyone just, I don't know what it was, but they could just tell that wasn't what I was supposed to be at. Like that wasn't supposed to be my outcome. Because when I told them, you know, I went through a breakup and stuff like that, they're like, you went through a breakup? And they're just very confused. Like, how'd you end up here? Because a lot of those people in psychiatric wards, most of the time, they have very severe mental illness. They have a lot of real traumatic things going on. Not to say what I went through wasn't traumatic, but at the same time, it made me just kind of take a step back, like, whoa, I thought I had problems. I do have problems. But if people in here can still be ambitious, have goals, have dreams, and they're 50 years old and they have very severe mental illness, but they don't let that stop them, I can't let this stop me. A breakup or depression, I can overcome this. So that's what caused me to start being more open and honest about my mental health struggles and stuff like that. So,
and that's, dude, I want to thank you so much for being transparent, and thank you so much for talking about these things. I mean, it's such a blessing whenever you run into people in life that have gone through hardships. They've become self-aware, and they've truly like unpacked that and embraced it, and like really taken it head on, and like been open about it, because like ultimately, like that's how we connect with others. Like others hearing these stories, others understanding that like you're not alone whenever it comes to these struggles. Like that's real. And so, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing that, because dude, like that's so deep. The other thing that I think is fascinating about this is the fact that, so you're 25 right now, and you told me that, you wanted to talk about finding purpose. And it sounds to me like that would have happened when you were 19 roughly, or 18. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
And then you also told me that you found purpose around that age. So was it through that experience, like really hitting that low to where like life just started like unfolding, and like you started finding a new purpose in life after hitting that super low point?
Yeah. And, growing up, my dad always asked me and my brother every day, what is your purpose? What'd you learn today at school? He was always trying to make sure that we had some form of knowledge or wisdom in our heads, and looking to grow mentally, looking to think about the future, work towards the future. And unfortunately, I never did that. I was always focused on things that didn't necessarily matter. And it wasn't up until that point that I really started looking at life differently. I started reading books, started going to therapy, and started really caring about my mental health and paying attention to what I consume, meaning like just whether it's, like I said, reading books, social media, who I talk to, just what I consume in general, everyday life. I think about, okay, is this good for me? Is this bad for me? What is this going to produce later? Because what you put in is what you produce as well, what comes out of you. So that's when I started focusing on those things. But I guess this is all tied together. So that was June of 2016. So in February or January of 2017, this is my second semester, senior year, I had to go to the psychiatric ward again for the same reason.
Wow.
With that same girlfriend. So like I said, this relationship was beyond toxic, and it was so much in that relationship. And I was in high school. I didn't know how to process my emotions well. It was a lot. So the second go around, it was just the same situation. It's a lot. I don't think people understand when you're emergency order detention like that, you feel like you're in trouble. You have the cops, you have them, looking at your text messages, you have handcuffs on. So it's like, it's very weird, but at the same time, and that's one thing, just me giving like, I don't want to say a shout out, but just a thanks to law enforcement here locally and more, because they were very, just, I don't know how to say this. They didn't judge me or anything. It was like they truly cared and genuinely was like, you need to go get some help. This isn't a punishment. This isn't something to make you feel less than. Like, this is normal for us. We see this all the time. So it was just, we need to go get you some help. You know what I mean? So that's the second time I went. It was another, again, just learning experience. And I was diagnosed with depression disorder, adjustment disorder with depression. So that just means, like I said, I don't handle adjustments well. So breakups is a big adjustment. You have somebody with you every day, all day. You talk to them 24/7, and then it's like, boom, they're gone. And you have to kind of treat it as if it's like a death in a weird way, because you're no longer attached to that person anymore. So the second time I went, like, again, the same experience, a lot of people in there talking to me. I'm talking to a bunch of other people. And it was something about hearing other people's stories and, just being open with other people in that setting. You don't have no access to a phone. You really can't go outside. You're on a time schedule. You have to interact with other people. So in doing that, it helped me learn and grow even more. I never once took medication. Both my parents are on medication for depression and anxiety. I was prescribed it twice and I denied it every time. And every time I met with the psychiatrist, psychologist, they always would look at me weird, like, hey man, you may need it. Like, this is your second time. The more you continue to go through these things, this could potentially end up the way that you were trying to make it end up. You may end up actually killing yourself. This could be worse. And something about it, I just believed that I could overcome this without taking medication. And, I'm here now. So, and it is a battle every day. It is a struggle every day with depression, anxiety, not being on medication. You kind of have to be cognizant of everything you do and be extremely aware of how you talk, how you act, who you interact with, things you say. You really overthink a lot, but fortunate enough, I feel like I've been okay not on medication. So yeah. So jumping forward, sorry, I feel like I'm taking a long time to answer some of these questions, but jumping forward, speaking of purpose and what is your purpose? So it really wasn't until I started doing my podcast. And that's when Anchor said, hey, come on our platform, create a podcast for free. And my dad was like, I don't see why not. Go do it. I've always been listening to podcasts. I love podcasts. And I'm like, okay. So at the time, there wasn't bundles you can buy. I couldn't go out and buy podcast bundles. I had to go figure out, let me go buy this mixer. Let me go buy this mic. It was a lot of trial and error, but fortunately I started it. And ever since, I kind of was like, didn't know, like I was majoring in psychology due to my mental health and stuff, but I'm like, man, I kind of just feel like I need to be majoring in, journalism, broadcasting, but I never really thought about it. I was always doing the podcast on the side. I used to get a lot of listeners, a lot of engagement. People always bring it up. I loved it. So that really gave me a purpose, meaning just gave me like a different outlook. Okay, like I'm talented, I'm creative, I can do all these things. And it opened up so many doors for me. So that's where I am now. But yes, that's the answer. Finding your purpose. It took a long time to find it, but fortunately I did. And that's how I am here today.
Dude, that's so cool. And like I said, thank you again for the vulnerability. I think it's a couple things, to unpack in there that I recognize as I was listening to your story. Number one, it's in moments of isolation, moments whenever we are closed off from everything that we're used to. It's moments we're closed off from social media, our phones, our friends, all the things that make us comfortable in life. And we get put in these situations. I mean, it happens to all of us in different scenarios at some point in our life, and where you really get a chance to just think. We're so stimulated. We're so busy all the time. We've got so many factors, 24-hour news, all these things that are influencing us. We very rarely get time to just sit and ponder and look at life and what exactly our purpose is. So it's cool to hear stories of someone that is in a situation like that. And from that moment of brokenness, from that moment of just like hitting a wall, from that moment, like to where you could have collapsed, you could have given in, you chose to persevere, and you chose to take, the other thing you said that I think is really cool is the fact that you went to study psychology because of your mental health issues. And I would assume, and correct me if I'm mistaken, that you chose to do that because you knew that if you were going through this, other people were going through it, right? Yeah, is that accurate?
Yeah. And I wanted to help other people. Because like I said, going to psychiatric ward and a mental hospital, it really gives you a different outlook on people and life, because when you're in there, you are not going to expect the people you see in there. I think people have a very bad view of a mental hospital due to movies or whatever it may be. But, when you're in there, though, you're around people who may own businesses. You may be around people who actually have addiction issues. You may have people that are in and out of jail, and they just ended up in there this one time because of, whatever it may be. But it's really a wake-up call. But at the same time, you can get a great experience out of it. Just like I said, having the world shut off completely, and you have no choice but to be around select individuals and talk to them and engage and hear their life stories. And you're like, wow, I have problems, but these people problems, not that it's, the impression Olympics. I'm not going, oh, what's worse to me? But it's at the same time, you just kind of make you be more humble. And you're like, okay, wait a second. This person's dealing with this, and I think I can deal with this. Maybe my outlook, maybe my perspective is just messed up. And that's one thing that therapy taught me with cognitive behavioral therapy is changing my thinking. And you change your thinking, you change your life. And that's one of my favorite quotes. The quote goes, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that is absolutely my favorite quote of all time, is by Wayne Dyer. And I've used that in every aspect of my life because it's true. You know, you have things going on the outside that may be horrible, but at the same time, your perspective can just help it just a tad bit. And I remember reading the book that he said that in. I was getting mad. I'm like, well, you know, what if the worst happens? My house burns down. What if? And the way he just put things, like, I even sat the book down because I'm like, this book's making me mad. That does not make any sense. But he put in there, you know, say your house does burn down 10 years later. Are you still supposed to have that mindset of, well, my house burned down 10 years ago, so I was never able to overcome these other obstacles. I was never, and I'm like, I get it. You know, you can have very bad things happen in your life. They're bad. But at the same time, your perspective can change everything. And that doesn't mean those things aren't bad, though. They're bad. But at the same time, your outlook on them can really just help you persevere a little bit better than an average person would, who would just say, you know what? Oh, well, this is life. I give up.
Dude, thank you for sharing that quote. That is a great clip. And I think hopefully a lot of people listen to what you just said, because it's so true. Like, we are only responsible for our decisions and our actions, and we are responsible for our perception, and we are responsible when things happen to us, how exactly we perceive it, how we're viewing it, if we're looking at it as a lesson or if we're looking at it as a setback, right? Like, your perception is so powerful. And I think that so many people, like, you know, they want to, you know, like this whole like topic of like manifesting, right? Like I'm fine with if people want to think that they can like think things into existence, but you can think as hard as you want, but it does require action as well. Like you've got to take steps in order to do that. Whenever it comes to like, even you, like you chose that. I love that you're self-aware and the fact that you talk about this. Like I'm someone that I believe whenever it comes to medication in relation to mental health, and I've done a considerable amount of research on this topic because of loved ones that I have that suffer from mental illnesses, that are on certain medications, some people that have been misdiagnosed, some people that have been put on medications the wrong way, and I've seen negative results from those. But like SSRIs, which is like, you know, antidepressant medicines, it basically creates serotonin naturally. They were originally created just to be a bridge to like a help, like it was supposed to be a bridge originally that's going to help you get through a rough time. And then you're supposed to learn skills and become self-aware to recognize whenever those things flare up. And the fact that you're aware, and the fact that you know that you still suffer from those issues, and the fact that you know that anxiety is still coming up and you're looking for ways to overcome that, really tells a lot about your maturity, especially, you know, where you're at in life and where you've come from. And you chose the hard path, which in argument, any, you know, choosing not to take the pill and choosing to really do the work is the harder path. And so I commend you for wanting to go down that pathway, because not a lot of people would have chosen that. It's a lot easier just to take the medication. And like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with medication. I've seen it do a lot of good with people, but only if there's also an exit strategy of how do I go on and live life without relying on this medication, you know, permanently in my life. And I want to jump back to something real quick that you said. So 2 times you said you were in this toxic relationship, and I kind of want to unpack that a little bit, not to dive too much into the relationship itself, but you know, it sounds like that was a real sticking point for you. That was really hard. I feel like there's people that are probably going to listen to this podcast. All of us at some point have gone through tough relationships, and we've gone through hardships, but you self-admittedly, which is very self-aware of yourself, said that you put yourself in that situation. What do you feel like from your childhood, or what do you feel like happened in your life to where you were willfully entering that relationship? And have you, through therapy or through other methods, really gone back and unpacked the why behind, you know, what brought you to that point in that relationship?
Well, if it wasn't for that first trip to the mental hospital, I never would have heard the words abandonment issues, you know, boundaries, things like that. I mean, simple terms we throw around now, but just 6-7 years ago, I never heard those words growing up. I never knew what those things were. So I had a therapist in front of me asking me questions, you know, like, you know, tell him about your childhood, stuff like that. And I'm telling him, and he's like, you know, it sounds like you kind of raised yourself emotionally. It also sounds like you have abandonment issues, you know. And I'm like, kind of like, what? You know, I don't know what those things are. And I was fascinated by this stuff because I love information. I love knowledge. So when he's telling me these things, I'm like, this is like, insane. Like, what are you telling me? Like, okay. So I started doing my own research, reading my own books about attachment issues and relationships. And I love that stuff. And that's what I was going to school for, as a licensed marriage family therapist, because I really love dynamics of relationships. But particularly with that relationship, it was really abandonment issues. It was, you know, anytime she would go do anything, whether it's family, whether it's work, whatever, I would feel a sense of just insecurity, and I would feel abandoned. And then when you get those feelings of abandon, people don't understand something called a schema, and that can develop in you, and you can feel these things. Same feeling I felt as a kid, maybe when my mom left me or my mom would do certain things. I have that same little turn in my stomach as a adult. And when I started researching these things and going to therapy, I really had to talk through these things about, why do you feel abandoned? What's the feelings or the thoughts that occur when she says this or does this? And I have to tell them. I'm like, okay, well, I see the problem here, that it's not the person in front of me, it's me. And, I feel like relationships really expose who you are because of that, because the person you're dating will trigger you every single day. And it's about how you deal with those triggers. And so in saying that, the girl at the time, nothing was wrong with her. She was living as she's supposed to, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it was a conflict, because I have all these triggers and you're just triggering me left and right. You're doing all these things. And then it was like I was trying to, change her to fit my triggers and my problems. But in reality, there's not a real issue with her. It's really with me. And I still have the issue in my current relationship now, where I have to take a step back and say, okay, is this me, or is this a true problem? Do we even need to have a conversation, or is this something I can just say, all right, this may be just me acting out of character, or this may be me dealing with my own personal issues. I need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and think, okay, how do I dissect this situation to make it make sense in my head so I don't get triggered, or so maybe I can handle this better emotionally? Because, and unfortunately, back when I did go to the hospital, it wasn't until years after I heard a lot of girls tell me, yeah, I've had a guy, I've had a boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, they threaten to kill themselves. They threaten to kill themselves. I'm like, I ran into it often. I'm like, why is that? And I'm like, I mean, men and boys don't know how to express themselves, don't express emotions or feelings. And it's uncomfortable, but at the same time, it's good, because, you have to get those things out, you bottle them in. And that's when people can become physically and mentally abusive. And I have to sit with myself a lot of times, and not now, but after that relationship ended, it was mainly like, wow, I cannot believe I may have impacted someone's life so much that they may never be the same, or they may never trust someone, or it may be harder for them to get another relationship because of things I may have said or did to them. And although it was in high school, I just, as you know, no matter what, high school, junior high, elementary, these things can affect you forever. So it took me a long time to kind of forgive myself and move on, and just get over the fact that, that's not who I am now. And mental illness and these traumatic events do not define me. That's just a part of my life. And that's just was a diagnosis. Now I have to be aware of it, every day. But at the same time, that does not define who I am. So whether someone's diagnosed with depression, anxiety, they're paranoid, schizophrenic, whatever they may be, it's a label, it's a diagnosis. You should be aware of it. You should take care of it. But at the same time, that does not define who you are as a person at all. So, so that basically, I just had to do you know how therapy is. I have to go back. I have to figure out, okay, my mom unfortunately was in a lot of abusive physically and mental relationships. I would wake up sometimes, she had black eyes. And it's kind of like, what's going on? What's happening? Why don't you leave that guy? And it was like, she was hearing me, but she didn't care enough to do it. So therefore I felt abandoned. I felt like, wow, my mom cares about whoever this man is more than she cares about me. She can't attend to my needs and my wants. And I'm a kid, but she can attend to this other guy's stuff who, abuses her, makes her feel like crap. So that's where my abandonment issues stem from. And me and my mom have a good relationship now, but I mean, it's still that little, and I don't resent her, but I still, all the time I'm kind of like feel a certain way about it. But at the same time, like I said, these are my problems, my issues. I deal with them. I don't ever just put blame on her, because she has her own background in mental health and mental illness. So I can't really just be, shun her for going through those things. So that's where the relationship issues stem from. Was like I said, I kind of raised myself emotionally. I really didn't have anyone to lean on, or I didn't feel like it at least. So that was my main problem.
Dude, thank you so much for sharing that, man. I hear this a lot. And I think that this new awakening has really like started, especially when it comes to men. And, our fathers were really raised in, the mentality was like, you just tough it out and you don't talk about your emotions, right? You just tough it out. Like, you don't talk about these things. Like, it's just, that's not what a man does. I think there's some truth to, the definition of what it is to be a man, but like, I don't, as human beings, like man, woman, whatever you are, like you have to talk through these things and you got to talk about your emotions and you got to be transparent, because if you're not transparent and talk about these things, a lot of you're not just, it's not that you're not talking about them. It's a lot of times you're lying to yourself. You are willingly and you are admittedly telling yourself, I'm not going to go there, which therefore means that you end up building up resentment. I have a lot of friends that have gone through similar things as you and they haven't recognized it. And then there ends up being this giant wedge between them and their family member that they went through that with, because they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to recognize the fact that it happened. And then you end up living like in this fog. And a lot of people would argue that in society today, it's really easy to do that, man. You can find a distraction anywhere you go 24 hours a day to where you don't have to think through these things and you don't have to work through them. I mean, and it's very, very easy to go down that path and just shut it off. And, it's remarkable to me. I have my own set of, I didn't have abandonment issues growing up. My parents, I'm fortunate enough to where my parents have been married for a really long time, but growing up, we went to a very legalistic church, and going to that very legalistic church led to me from a very young age thinking that I had to be perfect all the time in order to be accepted, which just from pure human, like just from like, or like being born, you're never going to be perfect. Not to mention you look around and nobody's actually perfect. But like growing up, I was always like, well, if I'm not perfect, I'm less than. And so I developed personally like this thought process to where I was like, well, if I'm not perfect, and if I don't say I'm perfect, then I'm going to be punished. Then I'm just going to lie about being perfect. And so like in my teenage years growing up, whenever I was going through high school, I would just lie about stuff. I would embellish stories. I would make it sound better than what it was. And like what that created was like, I would build up this first false persona of myself to make myself feel better so that I could escape from actually being my true self. And it took me years. And it actually just had a breakthrough this last year where I finally started really recognizing the damage that had caused in my life, not only to myself, but as you said, all of our actions actually affect others as well. And taking responsibility and ownership over our actions is just such a massive step whenever it comes to the evolution and like allowing your life to play out. Because until you can really recognize who you are, where you're at, and you start taking unconditional ownership over your actions, you're not responsible for what other people do. You're responsible for your actions. And until you start doing that in your life, it's really hard to progress forward. And from your perspective, there's about a 10-year age gap. So we technically are two different generations. Do you feel like in your generation that has been raised, basically, I mean, you knew technology basically your entire life. Me, I was in that weird like transition millennial. Do you feel like in your generation that, you always hear the older generation, well, the younger generation just doesn't appreciate anything and they just don't understand. Do you feel like in your generation that this is starting to become more of a, like, it's becoming more of a topic, right?
Yeah, definitely. But the problem with that as well, though, is people tend to use buzzwords like triggered. Now, the word triggered now, the connotation of triggered now, when you say triggered, people immediately tie it to, something politics and automatically maybe assign you to a political party if you say I get triggered about something. So it's weird now because, it's just this crossover because, a lot of people feel like, and I've had this issue because I am 25, but at the same time, like I said, I converse with people older than me, younger than me. I'm in a weird spot because
You're an
I
old soul,
try.
dude. You're an old soul. Facts.
Thank
Like I'll straight out label you. You figured out your purpose whenever you're 18. You're very mature for the conversation you're having. I would invite you to go hang out with me and my 60-year-old buddies that I hang out with. But anyway, continue. You're an old soul. So
that's not the first time I
absolutely
heard that, but
dude,
yeah,
I will
appreciate it.
slam dunk confirm it. The way that you're having this conversation right now is not normal for people in your age or any age, for goodness sake. So continue.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say I have an issue with trying to make sure I don't live my life being a victim, but that can be controversial to say to some people now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I understand why, but at the same time, you know, people have different upbringings, different values, morals. People come from a whole different background than me. So when people, do argue with that, you know, I don't argue back. We have different experiences, but that's just me personally because of what I've been through. I try not to live my life to be a victim in any situation or any matter. Now, of course, things can happen to you, but again, it's perspective. I try not to just dwell on it and make it like, you know, people are out to get me. It's more of a, what could I have done different in that situation? And then maybe I get sad about it because I'm like, wow, I could have done different. I knew better, but I wasn't able to. But, me being in college right now, I'm around a lot of younger people.
Mm-hmm.
And while it is a hot topic, I still feel like it's still taboo. And I only say that because, you know, I'm around, like I said, I'm around a lot of younger adults and I can tell like, okay, this person's going through something, but they're not going to be as open about it or express it. And I think it is because still we still have that stigma about mental health. Even in my generation, that stigma is still there. And I also think it doesn't help because people do use those words now more often, you know, abandonment or triggered or, whatever these words are. But at the same time, they don't know the real depths of those words, if that makes sense. So I can talk to someone about boundaries and abandonment issues and depression and anxiety, but their view of depression and anxiety is very different from mine, and not to say that theirs isn't valid. They just came up from a different way than me. So I may be 25 and they may just be 21, but at the same time, just that little bit of an age gap, when I have a conversation with them about depression, anxiety, whatever, in a serious manner, it's a whole different conversation. So, I do feel like it is getting better and it is a hot topic now, but I kind of cringe because sometimes I'm seeing like, self-help books with titles. I'm like, what the hell is that? Like I said, it's just becoming like a fake, let's be mentally, aware of these things, but I don't know. So it's hard for me to answer that question, but yeah.
I think, and just, I'm just going to bounce this off of you. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of people are now using mental health topics as a weapon, to basically excuse their behaviors. And so instead of them using mental health as a way to strengthen each other, instead of them using it as a way to build up themselves, they're using it as an excuse. It's like, well, I've got this going on, so therefore I'm going to use that as an excuse and I'm going to use that as a cop-out so that I don't have to do X, Y, Z. Like, the word narcissism, for instance, I can't stand that freaking word. I can't stand it.
That's
I can't stand it. Yeah. I cannot stand it, dude. I literally had it brought up to me. One of my buddies got called a narcissist. And like, I'm looking at this dude going, I'm sorry, like that does not compute. Like, and so I literally went and ordered the #1 book, like scientific research book. It was like a 12-hour listen. And I listened to it twice so that I could fully understand like what narcissism is. And technically, if you look at it, everybody in America is technically a narcissistic society. Like we are all the way that society is built in America is like, it is very geared towards a slightly narcissistic like personality, right? Like
very individual.
It's very individualistic. But like a true narcissist can't recognize the fact that narcissism even exists. And so all these people that are going around and using that word because they feel like it's a sword, like, oh, that person was just a narcissist, dude. That is, and that is what frustrates me in relation to the hot words, if you will, is people use it and they weaponize it. They don't use it to heal. They use it to weaponize, and they use it. It's the same thing as boundaries. Boundaries were not created to punish someone else. Boundaries are created to protect yourself from yourself because of you knowing exactly what your tendencies are. So That's just my opinion on it. I mean, would you agree with that? And
Yeah,
what are your
no,
thoughts in
definitely,
relation to
definitely.
weaponizing that stuff?
Because I'm on social media all the time, so I see a lot of discussions about a variety of topics, and I see those words thrown in there of boundaries and narcissism and all this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think you guys know the depth of these terms. But again, I'm on the flip side as well, is that my perspective is just different from theirs. They may have felt like they were raised and their parents were, one of their parents were a narcissist, and they just feel like they truly get, I don't know. So I try to just stay open-minded, and the journalist in me too is being objective and just saying, okay, I'm going to purposely seek out the other side of whatever this person says. So if they say this person is a narcissist, okay, that's fine. I'm going to go find someone that is the biggest fan of that person and thinks highly of them. And I'm going to go see what they say just to hear the two sides so that I can come to the common ground and think for myself. And that's probably, I think that is the issue in today's society, in the younger generation, specifically, is not thinking for themselves and letting social media and the 24-hour news cycle tell them what to think and what to do. Because in saying that, when you're allowing outside sources and people to tell you how to think and what to do, then you'll start using buzzwords you don't even know the meaning to truly,
Yeah, dude. I mean, we're in relation to that as well. Like, we're such a polarized society. People like, dude, I mean, it's like I told you, like, I've got a lady that's coming on this weekend on my podcast. And like, from the way that I was raised, so she has different beliefs than I do whenever it comes to like religion. She's got different spiritual beliefs. She's raised in a culture that is completely different than mine. And one of my buddies was like, dude, I think she's got a really good story that could impact a lot of people. And so many times, I've got 3 of my best friends, 2, they're in their 60s and 70s. And I just love these guys because like 2 of them, if you were looking at the political spectrum, swing one direction, and then one of them swings the other direction pretty hardcore. And then I'm kind of like an in-betweener. It's like whenever we get together, like we'll have these disagreements, right? Like we'll have these debates. But the great thing is at the end of the debates and at the end of the conversation, we're truly curious about what the other person's opinion is so that maybe we might learn something. And I feel like we want to go in and we're so worried about being right, especially in political matters or religious matters. We're so worried about being right that we just shut off our brain to where we might actually learn something from someone else that just has a different perspective.
I totally agree. And that all ties to how you're raised and what you've seen growing up and what you've heard, because, like I said, I purposely try to seek out both sides of any situation so I can get an understanding all the way of what's going on. Because if you just listen to one side only, then of course you're not going to know anything but that one side. So I have friends as well that fall on both sides. I'm at a college right now, which is a lot of conversation in Oklahoma about education and universities are more liberal, all this stuff. I'm around all this, the hot belly of it. I'm in class with a lot of people 19, 20 years old. So I'm having these conversations. I'm seeing things I may not agree with, but at the same time, that doesn't shut me off from talking to that person, getting to learn who that person is. They may have a whole different perspective on politics and whatever, but at the end of the day, to me, it just doesn't matter because, what do we gain from talking about politics all day or arguing about those things? We can have a true conversation about something else and have a lot of other things in common. But, I think I've always thought, there's mental health issues there. And I hate to say that, but, when people who do just live and die by politics, that's all they can talk about, all they can think about, all they can discuss, whatever. I'm like, okay, well, what's going on in your life? Do you feel like you need to lean on this thing and that's it? And that's your only talking point is what's going on the radical left or the far right. I mean, I'm like, dude, okay, well, we can have a conversation about anything else and you want to talk about, you know what I mean? So yeah, I agree with you on that 100%.
I mean, I'm a strong dude. It's funny. I'm a strong believer, and I've started using this so much more because I don't care whether you're Christian, whether you're Muslim, whether you're an atheist, whether you're whatever, like this, I feel like this can resound for everybody. There's only, in my opinion, there's 2 ways to live life. You can live life based off of fear of everything going wrong. Just literally you go through life and you are just fearful. So everything you do is out of fear. Or you can go through life and you can live it through a lens of faith, which is regardless of what happens to you, regardless of what the circumstances is, you have faith in the fact that you're going to learn something from it and something good is going to be produced on the other side. And I think those people that get stuck in this political banter or sociological banter, whatever it is, they're so scared of what might happen if they're not right that they're literally preventing themselves from actually growing and progressing forward. And whenever it comes to the subject of finding purpose in life, it's really hard to find purpose if you're living life in fear constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, think too, like like I said, I get it because I have friends on both sides, but I've been around their families and I realize they all think the same way. So in saying that, I'm like, okay, there's not going to be a way I change this person's mind about what they think about whatever politic issue it is. This is embedded in them. Their parents think this way. Their grandparents think this way. And it's also not my job to change what they think about it. So therefore, I just, that's my friend. Love them. We can talk about anything else. But it's when in those moments I realize, okay, well, this is a deeper issue than just, they hate whoever the president is. Their parents hate who the president is. Their grandparents hate. This is a long line of things. This is in their DNA almost. So, and then you run into people who their parents think a certain way and they purposely think the opposite, but they don't know it. So I'm like, okay, well, I see what's going on. It's deeper than just, and that's also with religion. I'm not really religious, but at the same time, I respect people who are, and I'm very spiritual and I do believe in a higher being. So I do run into those people who, don't want to be around certain people who are not religious or just don't care to partake in those, even in those conversations. They'll immediately shut you off. And I respect it. Sometimes I'm frustrated, like, why not be open-minded? But I respect it too. If someone grew up Christian, their parents are Christian, their grandparents are, who am I to come in and say, that doesn't make any sense or whatever it may be? Now we can have a debate, a conversation. We can be respectful in that, but who am I to do that? So I think that's the main issue in today's society is we just have to allow all of us to be ourselves, be who we want to be and whatever it may be, and just let it be like that. We don't need to change each other or anything based off how we feel. So,
yeah, I mean, dude, I shared this with you before we came on. Like I was raised very legalistic, closed-minded, like that's how I was raised. And my parents have changed a lot over the years. Like, God bless them, dude. My parents did the best that they could with what they were working with. Like, my parents are just gorgeous people. Thank God every single day for them. But like, I think most religions, whenever you look at, I know at least from my beliefs and from the beliefs that I follow, like, it was called to love other people, to understand other people, to truly listen to other people. And through love and through your actions of being curious about what other people are going through, like that's the best testimony you could ever speak to anybody. Like it really is like just loving them unconditionally, listening to them and actually taking interest in hearing their story, not automatically going in with a preconceived notion of who you think they should be based off of whatever political spectrum or wherever they came from. And I just think truly understanding each other and like truly having hard conversations and realizing the fact that we're only responsible for ourselves. Like we're responsible for ourselves. If we take care of ourselves, and if someone sees something in you and they really appreciate it and they come to you, then share with them if they're going to ask it. But like, it's not our place to go and shove things down people's throat or even judge anybody for the way that they are. So I do agree with that. And to summarize this real quick, because this has been great. What do you feel like, we've talked about the podcast thing. What do you feel, we talked about finding purpose. What do you see as your purpose? Like what would you define that as right now in your life?
I'm still trying to figure that out, but I really do feel like it is this, like having conversations with people. And I don't know what it was about podcasts. It came in my life around that same time, 2016, 2017, which is weird, but I started listening to podcasts around that time and I was just fascinated. And it was mainly because hearing people have long form conversations and absolutely saying whatever they want. And I love that stuff. And that's how I am. I want to hear whatever you have to say. I may disagree. I may agree, whatever it may be. You may say something that may hurt my feelings, but I'm going to listen and I enjoy those. I tell people all the time, I listen to stuff and watch content you would not believe. And it's only because I'm literally a seeker of knowledge and information.
Mm.
And that's based off just how I was raised and who I am. So in creating my show, I've talked to people from some very various backgrounds and some very interesting people. And after those conversations, you know, you feel rejuvenated, you feel good, you're on like an energy high, like, wow, and I'm like, I like this feeling to talk to someone I don't know. And at the same time, they have something that they said to me within an hour or 2 hours that just made me learn something, like, and it's recorded and I can go back and listen to it and I can share it with everyone. Like, that's awesome. So, I think, just in general, from what I know now, media is my purpose, whether it's social media, whether it's on camera, doing this, video editing. I love creating content. I love all aspects of media, how media is consumed, what it means, you know, media messages. I love all that stuff about media. So I know I will be in media in some sort. I don't know in what, but yeah, it took me a long time. But like I said, when Anchor come out and say, you know, you could do this for free, I started doing it. And it was really just, again, having people come to you and bring it up. People message you like, hey, this made me laugh. I love this. I told my friend about this. You know, I sold merch twice. I did 50 shirts each and they almost sold out each time. And I'm like, this is like, it just gives you kind of a like, whoa, like I didn't know people cared this much. I didn't know people liked me this much. So it's like, it kind of helps you have an oh wow moment. And it kind of, you know, because, you know, again, with depression, you think the worst things about yourself and you think I'm not deserving of love. I'm not worthy of success and I'm not worthy of people coming to me and just, you know, being nice to me based off of my podcast. You know, I've had people literally come to me and just offer random things, do whatever for just because I talk on a microphone. So I'm like, this is wild. You know what I mean? So, an example of that, I think I told you with the OK podcast, I wouldn't have met them or known who they were if it wasn't for my show. And I've been connecting with them and they reached out to me like, hey man, we have a third media pass. Do you want to come help us interview Kevin Gates? Like, you want to come set up camera? And I'm the biggest Kevin Gates fan. I didn't tell him this because I was like, I don't want them to be like, no, he's not coming. He might pass out. But I'm like the biggest Kevin Gates fan. Yeah, I was like, I hope they don't like get embarrassed. But I'm like, they don't understand how much this means to me right now, this moment. Right. So they asked me to do that. And I'm like, wow, I'm sitting there thinking, wow. Like I've not made any money from my show. I've not, you know, blown up or anything, but at the same time, having impact and having these connections have opened doors for me that you wouldn't believe. I mean, in that week alone, that Tuesday, I had an interview with the Thunder to do social media internship. And I still haven't heard back if I got it or not, but it was just crazy to me. I'm sitting there doing an interview with the social media director and the manager, and they're talking to me about my podcast. Oh yeah, we've checked out your, you know, Instagram. You know, they're mainly concerned about me, my podcast, my social media stuff with the podcast. I'm like, wow, I'm having this conversation now because of my show. If it wasn't for my show, I wouldn't have went to school for broadcast journalism. I would have had no passion or no purpose. I wouldn't have known anything. I would have just been out here, you know, living blind. Like, oh, I don't know what I want to do still, which is fine. But at the same time, it feels more comfortable and I can live somewhat happy knowing that, okay, I know my end goal is going to be somewhere in media. And I genuinely love editing videos. I genuinely love engaging in content. I love seeing people comment and like my posts and share. And it's not because I just love that clout or something. I just love seeing that I'm impacting people like I thought I would. My whole life, I'm junior high, high school, class clown. I would win class clown. And my parents, my dad specifically would be like, dude, you can't win an award for, you know, some academics or something else. Like, you got to win class clown. Like, what is, and it's funny how full circle it is. I'm like, now it's helped me, you know, being funny on camera, being out there, talking to people, saying crazy stuff, saying whatever's on my mind. It's helped me tremendously. Again, I told you it's like my form of therapy.
Dude, I think one thing that just kept on ringing in my head over and over again as you said that, and I just love it to death. People don't understand the power of transparency. People do not understand the power of being yourself. And people don't understand the more you open up, the more you're transparent, and the more you're real about everything in your life, not just the highlight reel, everything in your life, the more of an impact that you're going to have. I mean, I shared with you, I started this literally as I journal a lot. I don't know if you do. You strike me as a journaler as well. but
I've
I
been told
journal,
I need to journal, but I
dude.
still never. My girlfriend lives and dies. She
Oh,
journals,
dude.
but yeah.
I have 4 different journals for 4 different things. I've got a dream journal. I've got a prayer journal. I've got a journal from my like men's like Bible group where like we go Bible study group where we like go through and have really hard conversations. And
Uh-huh.
then I've got like a psychology journal. So I've got 4 different journals for 4 different purposes. The dream journal is funky. If you've ever wanted to do something really weird, if you ever, I don't know if you have vivid dreams or not, write out your
Yeah, I
dreams a
do.
couple
Yeah.
times. Dude, write out your dreams a couple times and wait a couple weeks. It gets weird. Like it gets real weird. Just try it
I
at some
may
point.
have to. I'm lazy. Like that's the social media in me. Like I want to be on my phone. I sit down and writing. Like that makes you have to sit with your thoughts writing. You know what I mean? So
It-
I have done it before. I have done it before when I was reading books a lot and stuff. I used to just write, my favorite, quotes down or whatever it may be. But yeah.
Try, dude. I just try it and get back to me, and I'm really excited to hear what happens.
Okay.
Just a couple times, like
You
just
have my
crazy
word.
dream.
I will
Wake
I
up,
have,
wake up. Just wake up, write it down, keep on going. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, you're good. You're good.
So, dude, I've loved this conversation. We're rolling up on an hour, and it seems like it's been about 30 minutes because I love these conversations, man. People are like transparency breeds transparency, and transparency breeding transparency opens up the door for healing in so many different areas. I mean, I've learned so much from you in this short 1 hour. I mean, like, and dude, we only get 32 million hours on average as human beings. And I am very grateful that I got the opportunity to spend this hour with you. I really, really am. I've learned a lot, and you've opened my eyes, and just thank you for your transparency. Thank you for your honesty, and thank you for your battle whenever it comes to going through everything you're going through. In closing, 2 questions I ask everybody. First question, favorite book, why?
My favorite book is Your Erroneous Zones by Wayne Dyer.
Okay.
And that is the book I was talking about earlier that it forms off of something called cognitive behavioral therapy, but also there's a book called, I think it's so I can't think of the name, but it's by Albert Ellis. He is an innovator in cognitive behavioral therapy, but also something called rational emotive behavioral therapy. Basically, this whole premise is just thinking, how you think, how you perceive things, and but it all started with The Erroneous Zones by Wayne Dyer, and that's why, because it's mainly just giving scenarios and situations and scenarios about if this thing does occur, how can you perceive this differently? So that's the book that opened my eyes to even get me here right now.
That's all. Have you read The Tools by Phil Stutz?
No, never heard of it. Never heard of it.
So Jonah Hill did a special on Netflix called Stutz, and it was about his therapist. I went back and read his book called The Tools, very similar. Basically, like, his thing is like whenever like you have things that happen in your life, or like if you have like a trauma event happen or whatever, like how to recognize it, and then he gives you tools on how to actually deal with it, which I believe is what you're referring to.
Yeah, basically that that is basically it. That book, and 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. I read that a few years ago.
It's really good.
And me and my dad actually read it, and it was a good moment to be able to call him and like, oh, you finished the book, and we talking about like, so yeah, but that book specifically too as well.
That's awesome. So second question, number one, it can be someone you know, or it can be someone that you've watched from afar. Who's the number one person that's impacted your life, and why?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm like really trying to think now. Let me boil this down to one person.
One person. Everybody else is gonna get mad, but that's fine.
It really had to be my dad. I'd have to say that it had to be my dad. Like I said, I had a rough relationship with my mom, and they were separate. But my dad was always that person that if you want to open up, I'm here. If you need something, I'm here. He's always there for that wisdom and to talk to, and he would have just little quotes he lived by, and it was random things he would just say, but it would be, and asking stuff like, what is your purpose? And he would always say, one thing the world doesn't have is you. So be yourself, be who you are, love yourself, things like that. He would tell us, idle hands is a devil workshop, find something to do. Or, you may end up doing something stupid if you have too much free time, stuff like that. So it had to be my dad.
Dude, that's awesome. Well, Alexander, thank you for coming on. I hope you enjoyed it. Do you have any closing thoughts or questions? We got about 3 minutes left.
No, I do not. I don't think so. But I want to say I do appreciate you inviting me on. I think these are very good conversations to have. To have people from various backgrounds talk about mental health is amazing because that may spark something in someone else that say, oh, that person may look like me or they come from the same background as me. So, they know my struggles and problems and I can relate and, all that good stuff. So.
It's awesome. Well, I'm going to drop a link for Alexander's show. If you are someone that struggles with mental health, if anything in this podcast resonates with you, I say this at the end of show, you can reach out to me. I'm sure, speaking for him, you can reach out to him. Like, the reason we have these conversations is because we've gone through hard times. We know that we're still going to go through hard times. We know that life is challenging, and like, we're having these conversations to be open. Then hopefully, if you're out there listening to this and you're struggling with any of these things we talked about, reach out to someone. There are people there that care about you.
Definitely. And I will say, suicide hotline, in all seriousness,
98. Yep.
People literally in high school, they used to have stickers everywhere. And I always think like, I really at the time, immature thing, that's silly. Like no one's going to call, like what? And I actually have had to call it and it actually did help me. I remember specifically, and I know you're trying to wrap up. She said,
it's okay.
I think she had said something to the effect, you don't want to die. You just want the pain to stop. And that like little phrase right there was like, whoa, like I was like, didn't know what to do after that. So when she told me that, like I said, it changed a lot for me thinking, okay, well, this pain is here. That's what I want to get rid of. I don't want to kill myself. I want to get rid of this pain. I just don't know how. So yeah.
988 hotline.
Yes.
Call it. If you're one of those people when you're listening to this, it's always there for you.
Yes.
So
and I'm so glad they did change that number to 98. That's very resourceful just to have those 3 numbers there. So yeah. Absolutely.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. Dude, really appreciate it. Hopefully we could do this again sometime, maybe do like an in-person thing, like a round table. And, so this is Adam with the Backpack Theory podcast. Until next time, we'll see you. See you guys later.